After smashing 3 past West Ham, Newcastle United is ending strong. So from the Osula masterclass, to the Brazilian maestro, to the massive Fabrizio Romano transfer exclusive on a potential exciting new signing, what's the truth behind a reported done deal? Join us as we'll break it all down and discuss the thing we learned from Newcastle United 3 West Ham 1.
Let's go!
So the first thing we learned was the Osula MJ masterclass. Will Osula was the star of the show as Newcastle United swept aside West Ham United 3-1 at St James's Park. And honestly, this felt like the night Eddie Howe finally unleashed chaos in human form. Playing Osula through the middle turned out to be a tactical masterclass. West Ham had to push up the pitch because of their relegation battle, and that played perfectly into the hands of the Danish striker, whose pace looked genuinely illegal at times. Every time Newcastle broke forward, it felt like the Hammers' defense was chasing shadows and filing missing person reports. Osula ended the match with the highest XG of any player and a ridiculous 9.2 rating after scoring twice from 3 total shots. He completed 2 out of 2 dribbles, the second most of any player in the match, won all 5 of his ground duels, was fouled twice, and carried the ball 8 times. It wasn't just goals either, it was controlled chaos. Constant runs in behind, physical battles, stretching the defense, bullying centre-backs. West Ham simply couldn't live with him. His first goal perfectly summed up the game. Newcastle sliced through West Ham with a slick passing move before Osula exploded into space and finished clinically. The second was calmer, more composed, almost striker-like in the way he opened his body and passed it home around the penalty spot. Considering some questioned whether he was ready to lead the line, this was one loud response. And now the numbers are getting outrageous. William Osula has now scored 7 Premier League goals from just 4.29 XG, despite only starting 7 league games all season. Newcastle's joint third highest league scorer in just 785 minutes. That is absurd efficiency. Even funnier, according to Toon stats, Isak at Liverpool versus Osula at Newcastle this season, Osula leads on goals, goals per 90, shots per 90, shots on target and minutes per goal. Not the comparison anyone expected when the season started. Somewhere, football Twitter is currently typing through tears. Osula has now scored 5 goals in his last 8 Premier League appearances, and at just 22 years and 286 days old, he became Newcastle's youngest player to score a Premier League brace since Kennedy back in 2018. And this is why patience matters. After the arrivals of Nick and Yoann Wissa last summer, many expected Osula to be loaned, sold, or quietly pushed down the pecking order. Eintracht Frankfurt even offered €28.5 million for him. Newcastle resisted, and now that decision looks inspired, because this could easily have become another Elliot Anderson situation. A talented young player sold too early before exploding elsewhere. Instead, Howe trusted the process, trusted the development, and now Newcastle suddenly have a terrifyingly raw striker who looks built for transition football. The scary thing? He's still rough around the edges. His movement is improving, his hold-up play is getting stronger, and confidence is clearly growing with every appearance. If this is the current version of Osula, defenders might want to enjoy facing him now before he fully figures everything out. Because a 6'3" striker running at full speed with confidence and end product is basically a horror movie for centre-backs. As Eddie Howe said after the game, he's really growing, I think. He's improving all the time. I thought there were some really good moments from him today. And the goals. To lead the line for Newcastle isn't an easy thing. There's a lot of pressure, expectation, and responsibility with that role. He's vastly improved, but I still feel he's got a lot to come, which is really exciting. Behind all the spotlight surrounding Will Osula, there was another moment that probably meant just as much to Newcastle United fans. Voltemade finally remembered where the goal was. After enduring a brutal run of 17 league appearances without scoring, the big German finally ended the drought and opened the scoring for Newcastle with a composed finish that looked like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Incredibly, the goal also came from his first shot on target in 13 Premier League matches, which tells you everything about the barren spell he had been battling through. Some strikers go through dry patches. Voltemade looked like he'd accidentally left his shooting boots somewhere around Christmas. What made the goal even more impressive was the quality of the finish itself. Despite generating only 0.20 expected goals, he turned his lone effort of the game into a goal. outperforming his XG by plus 0.56. Imagine. His shot carried an XG of 0.44, showing just how accurate and clinical the strike was once he finally pulled the trigger. One shot, one on target, one goal. The sort of efficiency Newcastle fans have been begging to see from him again. Beyond the goal, it was another reminder of how technically gifted Voltemade actually is. He finished with a solid 7.5 rating, completing 29 of his 35 passes, 83%, while also creating 3 chances for teammates. Across his 75 minutes on the pitch, he registered 49 touches and linked play intelligently throughout the first half, showing the tidy footwork and composure that have always made him such an intriguing player despite the recent criticism. Most importantly, though, the finish felt symbolic. It was his first Premier League goal since December, and his first goal at St James's Park in months, and you could almost sense the collective relief around the stadium when the ball hit the net. Newcastle supporters know there's a talented footballer in there. They've just spent weeks watching him politely refuse to shoot.
So that was a f***ing lie.
Then, Jacob Ramsey produced one of his most complete performances yet for Newcastle United, covering ground relentlessly and playing with the kind of energy that made him impossible to ignore throughout the first half. Operating mainly from the left side of midfield, Ramsey seemed to pop up everywhere. 1 minute driving forward down the flank, the next drifting centrally, or even appearing on the right side to help overload the attack. Buzzed around like a bee, honestly felt like an understatement. The numbers behind his display were outstanding. Across 102 minutes, Ramsey completed 51 of his 56 passes, an excellent 91% accuracy, while also winning 5 of his 6 ground duels and producing 4 successful tackles from 5 attempts, the highest total of any player on the pitch. Add in 7 recoveries, 4 accurate long balls from 4 attempts, 3 progressive carries, and 2 chances created, and it becomes clear just how influential he was in every phase of the game. His quality on the ball was particularly noticeable in tight spaces, where he consistently managed to wriggle away from pressure and keep attacks moving. His attacking contribution deserved equal praise too. Ramsey supplied a superb assist and ended the game with 65 touches, underlining just how involved he was in Newcastle's build-up play. It was the type of performance that leaves supporters genuinely excited about what he could become next season. The technical quality has always been obvious, but now there's growing consistency and confidence to go with it. That's why recent reports suggesting both Ramsey and Joe Willock could potentially leave the club this summer feel increasingly difficult to believe, at least in Ramsey's case. Newcastle fans watching performances like this are probably reading those rumors the same way Ramsey reads pressure in midfield, calmly, before moving straight past them. Meanwhile, Harvey Barnes once again proved why he remains one of Newcastle's most effective attacking players, even in games where he doesn't dominate possession. Heading into the match, Barnes had already been involved in 21 goals across all competitions, while also creating 31 chances, so there was plenty of anticipation surrounding what he might produce next. He delivered again. Although he finished with a fairly modest 6.8 rating, Barnes still played a decisive role in both of Newcastle's first-half goals. His pressing and awareness led to him intercepting Mads Hermansen's pass, before setting up Voltemade's opener, showing once again how dangerous he can be when he senses hesitation from defenders. Barnes ended the game with 1 assist, a 0.25 XA, 1 big chance created, and 2 key passes. He also completed 21 of 26 passes, 81%, while registering 2 shots, one of which tested the goalkeeper. Even when Barnes isn't at his explosive best, he still finds ways to influence matches. His movement remains sharp, his decision-making in transition is improving, and his end product continues to stand out. He has now been directly involved in 22 goals in all competitions this season, with 16 goals and 6 assists, which is elite production by any standard. And quietly, perhaps awkwardly for some people, performances like Barnes are beginning to shift the conversation around Anthony Gordon. While speculation around Gordon's future continues to grow, Barnes is steadily making himself harder and harder to drop. Newcastle fans may not quite be panicking about a possible Gordon exit yet, but there's definitely some nervous fidgeting starting to creep in. Then in a midfield match class, whilst losing Elliot Anderson, now somehow carrying a reported £100 million valuation, still feels painful in hindsight for many Newcastle United supporters. Eddie Howe already has his own midfield superstar running the show at St James's Park. And on the very same day, Anderson registered 2 assists in Nottingham Forest's chaotic 3-2 defeat to Manchester United. Bruno Guimaraes responded by producing another midfield masterclass of his own against West Ham United. At this point, calling Bruno influential almost feels lazy, because Newcastle genuinely functioned through him. The Brazilian was everywhere, dictating the tempo with almost 100 touches, the most of any player on the pitch, constantly demanding the ball and driving Newcastle forward with quick, incisive passing. Every meaningful attack seemed to flow through him, which is becoming about as surprising as the sun rising in the morning. His first half numbers alone showed just how dominant he was. Bruno won 8 duels, made 4 tackles, completed 6 entries into the final third, delivered 5 crosses, won 2 fouls, conceded 3, and regained possession twice. He was simultaneously Newcastle's playmaker, ball winner, and emotional heartbeat all rolled into one. West Ham's midfield must have felt like they were being followed around by an extremely aggressive GPS tracker. The intensity never dropped after the break either. By full time, Bruno had won 13 duels, made 5 tackles, completed 12 final third entries, won and conceded 5 fouls each, regained possession 5 times, and completed 2 successful take-ons. He repeatedly threw himself into challenges to stop transitions before they developed, expertly walking the tightrope of tactical fouling without actually collecting a yellow card. 5 fouls and no booking? That's not midfield play anymore, that's a magic trick. There was also a controversial flashpoint involving Thomas Souček, who appeared to plant his foot towards Bruno while the Newcastle midfielder was on the floor. The incident escaped punishment, much to the frustration of the home crowd, although Bruno being Bruno, he probably took it as a compliment that opponents were becoming that annoyed by him. Comparisons with Anderson are understandable. The former Newcastle Academy star has impressed at Forest with 4 goals and 4 assists, alongside 2.7 tackles per game and a 55% dual success rate in the Premier League. Bruno's numbers, though, remain elite for a midfielder operating at the highest level. The Brazilian has already produced 9 goals and 5 assists in 28 league games, while averaging 2.2 tackles per match and winning 51% of his duels. Anderson may be homegrown, but Bruno has long since become an adopted Geordie, and in terms of influence, leadership and quality, he is just as central to Newcastle's identity. Alongside him, Sandro Tonali once again showed his physical presence and composure in midfield, before his evening was unfortunately cut short by injury early in the second half. Howe later reassured supporters by explaining that Tonali had felt discomfort in his hamstring, but that it did not appear to be serious. "I think he felt his hamstring. I don't think it's a big injury, but it was enough for him to come off," he said. Newcastle fans collectively reading those comments probably reacted the same way, staring nervously at the screen while pretending not to panic. After Tonali's withdrawal, Joe Willock entered the match and quietly made an important contribution. The midfielder reacted sharply to win possession high up the pitch before setting up Osula's second goal, proving once again how valuable his energy and pressing can be in moments when Newcastle need fresh legs and intensity late in games. Then, in some transfer news, Newcastle United's search for a long-term solution in goal continues to gather pace, with fresh reports claiming Stade Reims goalkeeper Ewan Jowan could be edging closer to a move to St James's Park. Nick Pope produced another huge performance for Newcastle United against West Ham, finishing the match with a strong 7.6 rating after making 7 saves, including 6 from inside the penalty area, while also claiming 2 crosses confidently. His shot-stopping kept Newcastle in the game on multiple occasions, and on another day the scoreline could easily have been far worse without him between the posts. But still, after another season where Nick Pope's strengths and weaknesses have both been heavily highlighted, as he was later caught off his line as the Hammers pulled one back in the last game. As such, there is a growing expectation that Eddie Howe will target serious competition, or potentially a future replacement, between the posts this summer. Pope remains an outstanding shot stopper on his day, but several costly errors this season, combined with concerns over his distribution and comfort in possession, have increased speculation that Newcastle are preparing for a transition in goal. However, in a recent development, according to transfer journalist Sacha Tavalieri, Newcastle have taken significant steps towards securing the 20-year-old signature. The report claims Yawen has already agreed terms in principle with Newcastle following a recent visit to the club, with negotiations between Newcastle and Reims expected to continue over a deal potentially worth around £17 million. Tavolieri added that Yawen would arrive to compete for the number 1 spot next season. That detail naturally raises further questions about Pope's long-term future at the club. However, caution is needed regarding the claims. While Newcastle have previously been linked with Yawen, reports suggesting an agreement is already in place may be premature. Shortly after the story emerged, the Chronicle reported that sources inside Newcastle denied claims that the goalkeeper had recently visited the club or that any deal was close to completion. As things stand, the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. Yawen is clearly a goalkeeper Newcastle are aware of, but whether discussions have progressed as far as being reported remains uncertain. From a football perspective, the Frenchman would also appear more like a developmental signing than an immediate first-choice replacement. Despite his talent and potential, Yawen has spent most of his young career playing in France's second tier and lacks top-level experience compared to other names Newcastle are considering. That could mean Newcastle still pursue a more established goalkeeper, such as Trafford, Verbruggen or Risse, while viewing Yawen as a long-term project capable of growing into the role over time. At 20 years old, he fits Newcastle's broader recruitment model perfectly. Young, highly rated, and carrying significant resale value if developed correctly. Whether he ultimately arrives this summer remains to be seen, but Newcastle's growing list of goalkeeper targets suggests change in that department is becoming increasingly likely. Another keeper increasingly linked is Werder Bremen goalkeeper Mio Backhaus. Earlier this month, reports from Germany claimed Newcastle were closely monitoring the 22-year-old, whose valuation is believed to sit around €12 million, a fee considered relatively reasonable in today's market. Backhaus joined Werder Bremen's academy in 2018 before progressing into the senior setup a few years later. After spending the 2023-24 season on loan at FC Volendam, he established himself as Bremen's first-choice goalkeeper across the last 2 campaigns. This season, he recorded 5 clean sheets while conceding 56 goals in 32 league appearances, though the raw numbers arguably failed to reflect his performances behind a struggling defense. In Werder Bremen's final match of the season against Borussia Dortmund, Backhaus reportedly received a standing ovation from supporters after making several key saves that prevented a heavier defeat. According to German outlet Bild, the goalkeeper appeared emotional after the game, sparking speculation that he may have played his final match for the club. When asked directly about his future, Backhaus remained non-committal. "We're spending 2 or 3 nights away with the team. Then I'll think about it," he said. Newcastle are not alone in the race, however. SC Freiburg are also believed to be interested in signing the goalkeeper, and their chances could increase further if current first-choice keeper Noah Atubalu departs this summer. There is also a wider financial angle influencing the situation at Werder Bremen. Manager Daniel Toon admitted he would ideally like to keep Backhaus, but understands the reality of the club's situation. "It would be desirable to have Mio Backhaus in the team. He was one of the few bright spots and winners this season. If Backhaus decides to leave, I will accept it," Toon explained. Meanwhile, sporting director Clemens Fritz openly acknowledged that player sales may be necessary to improve the club's finances. "Mio Backhaus has had an outstanding season, which no one could have predicted. We are dependent on transfer revenue. We have to see what happens in the next few weeks," Fritz said. For Newcastle, Backhaus would represent a younger, modern-profile goalkeeper with strong reflexes and significant development potential. At just 22, he fits the club's broader recruitment strategy of targeting emerging talent before their value explodes further, and at around €12 million, he could prove to be a relatively low-risk investment in a position Newcastle are increasingly aware needs long-term planning. Then, in a massive development, one player who continues to be strongly linked is Monaco midfielder Lamine Camara. Interest in the Senegal international has existed for some time, but fresh reports suggest Newcastle may now be moving beyond simple scouting and towards more serious discussions. According to transfer journalist Fabrizio Romano, talks have already taken place between Newcastle and Camara's camp as the club explores the conditions of a possible move. "We had already discussed the interest recently, even before Fabrizio Romano's exclusive revealed the latest developments, but not many people chose to watch. And I was just there like,
What happened to you, Dylan?
You used to be somebody I could trust.
On the transfer itself, the timing of those reports is significant, especially after claims last week that Liverpool are also preparing to enter the race for the 22-year-old midfielder. If Newcastle genuinely want to land CAMARA, they may need to move quickly before competition intensifies further. CAMARA has long looked like a player who fits Newcastle's recruitment profile. Athletic, technically gifted and tactically disciplined, he offers qualities Newcastle's midfield has occasionally lacked this season, particularly control in possession and defensive balance. His ability to operate as a deeper midfielder while also progressing play forward has made him one of the most highly rated young midfielders in League One. The link itself also feels more credible than many transfer rumours that surfaced during the summer. Newcastle's admiration for CAMARA has been reported consistently for months rather than appearing suddenly out of nowhere. That said, caution is still needed. Reports of talks taking place often emerge early in transfer windows and do not always lead to genuine negotiations. Newcastle supporters have seen plenty of similar stories in recent years that ultimately faded away quickly, or ended with another club swooping in to sign the player instead. That's why the key now is to move quickly, progress negotiations, and get the deal signed before other clubs begin circling. There is also always the possibility that information is being strategically leaked by agents or intermediaries to increase wider market interest in a player. Still, with the transfer window approaching rapidly, Newcastle can no longer afford another slow summer. Eddie Howe has repeatedly stressed the importance of completing business early, so new signings have time to settle before the new season begins. In previous windows, delays and drawn-out negotiations have often frustrated those plans. This summer may represent Ross Wilson's first real opportunity to change that pattern and deliver Newcastle's targets before rival clubs fully enter the race. Then, after an emotional farewell to Kieran Trippier, who received a brilliant tribute during his final game at St James's Park, if you would like to know the dark truth on why Kieran Trippier is Newcastle's most important signing ever, click the video link now on your screen.